Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar entitled the Microsoft Power Platform Playbook. Our agenda for today, we divided up into 4 sections. We're going to start talking about the Power Platform, what's included, and then talk a bit about the benefits and some metrics so you can build your own internal business case. Next, we're going to talk about what you can get out of the box for free as part of your standard licensing. But really important to understand when free runs out of road and when you need to start considering premium features. In our third section, we'll talk about cost management strategies. We'll explain how to avoid cost overruns and surprises. And finally, we're going to run through 2 demos. The first one is a demo based on a solution we built recently for a customer, which has a very wide range of applications. We will show you a customer being onboarded through a portal, uploading documents, these then being routed automatically to the sales team, key data points being extracted using AI, and some Power BI dashboards thrown in for good measure. The second demo, which Chris is going to run, leans more into Microsoft's Copilot using AI to interrogate HR documents, which has great self-service potential. In terms of introductions, I am Morgan McElligott, CEO of Impute Technologies. I'm joined by Chris Parks, who is a business development manager for Companion, who are our channel partner and the leading distributor of Microsoft business applications across Europe. Chris worked for 16 years in Microsoft, so has some really good insights in relation to the Power Platform and how it has evolved over the years. So welcome, Chris. Happy Friday. Do you want to give a bit more on your background?
Can do. Yeah, pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invite, Morgan. You're right, I was 16 years at Microsoft. I started out as a developer, so I come from a strong technical background. Visual Fox Pro of all things, giving ages away a little bit there as well. But I joined a company called Great Plains in 2001, who were acquired by Microsoft in 2003. My first ever role there was partner technology specialist for CRM 1.2. So that was the first ever international release of their dynamic CRM product. I think I spent 8 years in technical roles, pre-sales, got to know information worker, business intelligence, all that side of things. And then spent 8 years in commercial roles before I left, and took a year out and then decided to get back into Dynamics. I love it that much. I missed it that much. I work with all my old channel partners, and that's now where I help out at Companion, and that's where the invite today came from today. So thank you.
Great. So to avoid death by PowerPoint, Chris, we're going to run this as a discussion format. And if anyone would like to ask any questions as we're going along, please do so via the Q&A function, which is live, and we'll try to handle as many of these as possible. Before we begin, I'm conscious that there are a lot of new faces attending this webinar. So for those who aren't familiar with Impute, we are celebrating our 25th anniversary this year. Our head office is in Dublin, and we also have teams in the UK and Poland. We specialize purely in enterprise automation solutions that make work more efficient and ultimately save you money. A lot of organizations that we talk to want to automate, but they often don't have the time or the in-house expertise. And we help organizations to tackle this complexity from technology selection, implementation, and ongoing support. We are software vendor neutral, but have a partner network of best-in-class technologies, including the Microsoft Power Platform, which is the focus of today's webinar. Okay, so section 1, making a business case for Power Platform. Chris, before we could make a business case for Power Platform, we need to really understand, I suppose, what it is, and maybe a good place to start is at the bottom of the screen there with Dataverse.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think to get the most out of the Power Platform, you've got to understand the evolution. You've got to understand where it came from. I don't know if anybody's been online today on LinkedIn this morning and so on, but they'll see it's Microsoft's 50th anniversary today. So the company was founded 50 years ago. And Dynamics has been a part of that for over half of its life. And the Power Platform was born really out of Dynamics. And that piece at the bottom, Dataverse, it's fascinating because I mentioned at the start, I joined Microsoft through the Great Plains acquisition in 2001, 2003, when I kind of moved over to Microsoft. And back then, Microsoft had acquired these what ERP businesses. So they bought Navision, Exacta, Great Plains, Solomon Software in the US, all of which were operating independently, and they launched their own CRM product. And if I think way back when, this is 20 plus years ago now, they had this vision to create one sort of centralized data store for all of their ERP applications. So the plan was acquire and create one centralized data store. Now, the world was completely different 20 years ago. We think nothing of jumping on a Teams meeting today and working cross regions, cross time zones. It's just easy because of the power of technology. But back then, you've got development teams in Fargo, in North Dakota, in Copenhagen, on the east coast of the USA, and they weren't able to really create something that they termed it Project Green, which always makes me smile when I see the Dataverse logo. It took them 15 years to get that right. 15 years later, after they started on that journey, Microsoft came out with the Common Data Service, which was based on the Common Data Model. And that is the unified backend now for all of their business applications. It's the database for all of their business applications. And they, in a moment of marketing genius, you might want to say, rebranded it Dataverse around about 3 years ago. Whether you love the name, whether you don't, that's what it is. And it's really their business data platform that serves everything in their business application stack and across all of the Power Platform.
Okay, great. So that's Dataverse and a bit of history and a bit of background about it. What about the other apps that we have here, Chris?
So yeah, we can go through these and we will in turn. Yeah, Power Apps for me is it's really powerful. I think it's important that the audience is able to understand that when Microsoft talk about Power Apps, there are two very distinct types of Power Apps, and we'll get into this more when we talk about what where it runs out of road when we look at Dataverse for Teams and so on. But there is Canvas apps and there is model-driven apps, and they are two very different things. So Canvas apps were Canvas apps is where you start with a blank canvas in a designer, and you can, if you want to, connect to a database backend. So whether that's SQL in Azure, whatever you want that data backend to be, if you've got a connector to it, you can connect there, and you can put this Canvas app, and you can just design a kind of like basic form-like functionality, or even complex form-like functionality, if you're capable, on top of AN other data source. However you kind of decide. The other piece here is model-driven apps. Model-driven apps are way more powerful. They use the interface that Microsoft uses for all of their Dynamics products. So if anybody's familiar with Dynamics 365 sales or customer service, field service, those first-party apps that Microsoft provide, I think of those as first-party Power Apps, because with model-driven apps, as kind of customers with the licenses or as partners that provide services into customers, you can create applications using the exact same toolkit that Microsoft used to create theirs. So you could replicate Dynamics 365 sales using Power Apps, model-driven apps, and it would be in the same backend, which is Dataverse. So model-driven apps are a lot more powerful than Canvas apps. I guess the differentiation is with a model-driven app, it has to sit on top of Dataverse, whereas a Canvas app can sit on anything.
Okay, great. And maybe Power BI next, Chris, just to cover that one briefly.
Yeah, Power BI, data visualization tool. Microsoft have complicated this a little bit recently by half rebranding it as Fabric, which is like Power BI's big brother. The key to Power BI, I think, is you can connect to any data source. You can basically create data visualizations, and you can share those across the organization. And if I think back again to when I was writing software back in the days when we had I used to work on a HR platform as well once upon a time. We had our own kind of web front end self-service. We had our own reporting solution, then that became SQL reporting services. Power BI now really is the primary data visualization from Microsoft in their business intelligence stack, as it were.
Okay. And Power Automate, Chris, do you want to touch on that?
Can do. It's cloud workflows and desktop workflows, Morgan, but I know this is your specialization, and this is where Impute kind of really shine. So
Okay, well, yeah, well, I think maybe the one thing to flag for people on the call here, and yes, it's a process automation engine, but the confusion and maybe the question we get asked a lot about is, the difference between Power Automate and Power Automate Desktop, and really they are very different and pretty much two different products. So Power Automate Desktop is in effect an embedded or an attended RPA tool, while Power Automate focuses on cloud automation with connectors. So to give an example, Power Automate Desktop is very powerful for recording mouse clicks and keyboard inputs, which might be very useful if you're looking to automate a process involving extracting data from a website and then updating your legacy ERP. Power Automate online would be more appropriate if you're looking to set up flows within with your online CRM, for example, with a trigger when a new customer is onboarded. So quite different in terms of capabilities and use cases. Um, and maybe just the last one, Chris, Power Pages, very quickly. Do you want to touch on that one?
yeah, just I will do just briefly back on the Power Automate. You used RPA there, which is robotic process automation.
Mhm.
And I think some of the more powerful things that I've seen from Microsoft, there's a really cracking video out there, says let robots process your invoices. I was kind of disappointed when I realized there was no actual robots involved. But the kind of the OCR, optical character recognition, to extract the text, to read from the screen and to automate that kind of manual process. Those are the things where Power Automate can really shine, as well as the cloud flows and the connectors. So Power Pages is the history of Power Pages. Again, you have to think about where this came from to find the best use case for it. It says websites and portals there on the text that I kind of put on the slide. I think it's really powerful from a portals perspective, and this used to be called Power Portals previously, to give you some indication of where this started fitting into the Microsoft ecosystem. But I don't think many organizations are going to choose Power Pages as their web front end for their entire brand and everything else. But the strength of Power Pages is that it will allow access into the Dataverse for authenticated users that log in. So one of the demonstrations and one of the examples I've kind of done here is to synchronize up data from Business Central, or you can use data from the finance and the supply chain management, because that's all built on Dataverse or works seamlessly with Dataverse. And then create a Power Pages portal that you can sit on the front end that enable a customer to self-serve, to log in, to check stock, to check prices, because all of that data is normally in the ERP system. And so they can access that real time by self-serving, and it can really cut down on the admin. It's priced by Microsoft on a kind of every 100 users per month is how they position that in market on a pricing. But it can really get around multiplexing scenarios where Microsoft says everybody has to have a license to access our data in our backends. And Power Pages there has an efficient way to enable customers to self-serve into the data that's stored within an organization from a portals perspective.
Okay, and the final one, which actually isn't on the chart, Chris, Power Virtual Agents. Why haven't you put that up there?
When we spoke, we left it out because it doesn't exist anymore, although it actually does still exist. It's not called Power Virtual Agents, and that's the key to it. So Microsoft, in their wisdom, basically rebranded Power Virtual Agents as Copilot Studio. And Copilot Studio is very powerful. And I wish it was still called Power Virtual Agents. And somewhere down the line, I think Microsoft might wish it was still called kind of Power Virtual Agents as well, because Copilot Studio isn't really the right name for it anymore. And just to help you understand what I mean by that and what's going on here. Microsoft talk about AI, and I think if you look at the Gartner research, there's something like 35, 36 different types of AI. And when Microsoft went to market with their AI strategy, it was all around generative AI. There's a couple of other bits in there now with some of the things that they've released recently, but it was all around generative AI. And then all of a sudden, Microsoft had a Copilot for this, a Copilot for that, a Copilot for something else. And I think they had 27 Copilots at one point in time, counting them all up. And what they did, they said, right, they didn't say this. This is me kind of putting words into their mouth, but they confused the heck out of the market with all of these Copilots, and it was Copilot, Copilot, and it got a little bit too much. And they said, okay, we need to kind of think about how we position this. So they changed Copilot into hi. I'm Copilot, as you can see there. And Copilot became your AI companion, so your personal AI companion. And they said everything else is an agent. So now when you see the Microsoft Copilot strategy, you will see there is only one Copilot, and that's the interface that people use. And then everything else is an agent. And Power Virtual Agents used to be able to let you create, guess what? Virtual agents. Now you create those agents in Copilot Studio. So Microsoft, instead of having 27 Copilots, they now have over 30 agents because they've released some more recently. And everything in Copilot Studio is what was Power Virtual Agents, and that's why we didn't put it on there as a Power Platform tool. But if you look into the Microsoft product terms and the licensing guides, Copilot Studio is a core part of Power Platform now. It was just rebranded from Power Virtual Agents.
Okay. And your demo later on, Chris, is going to touch on it, is going to show that from a HR perspective later on. So we'll get to see that in action.
Yeah, so I've actually created a Copilot Studio agent. I think it's the last thing on the agenda today. We'll drill into what you need to create one, how it works. Microsoft changed all of the licensing for this on April the 1st as well. So if there's questions around Copilot Studio licensing, I think the best thing I saw recently, Morgan, this really does lead into where it runs out of road. Satya Nadella and Charles Lamana kind of lead the efforts from Microsoft, and they keep announcing these new agents. And the best comment I saw on LinkedIn recently was, would it be possible for Microsoft to write an agent to help us understand how much it costs to run all of these agents? I think that's where we're at with this at the minute.
Very good. Okay. Look, that's a really great summary. Thanks for that, Chris. So I suppose hopefully we now know a bit more about what the Power Platform is, and let's talk a bit about building a business case internally. And I think the first question to answer is why the Power Platform? So just to call out, a few positives or benefits of the Power Platform. Firstly, it's a low code platform. So things that took months to build before can now be built in weeks, and they typically look a lot better. For those who are already an existing Microsoft customer, the extra licensing costs can be a no-brainer. So you're getting enterprise capability with low incremental cost. The ideal use case that we would point to is low to medium complexity use cases where you're looking to automate within the Microsoft ecosystem. But Visual Studio does allow you to push the capabilities even further into advanced use cases. A huge benefit that maybe doesn't get the attention it deserves, but you are getting Microsoft security standards, which are market leading. So that's a real positive that maybe isn't front and center in people's minds. And finally, it's interconnectable with most enterprise platforms. Of course, it's not one size fits all. There are some caveats to be aware of. And I think the first one to call out, advanced use cases in particular can require extra customization, which might take more time and cost. And we would always say that organizations should weigh up the total cost of ownership here. Okay, license costs might be low, but is it going to require a lot of man hours to build the thing? So, you need to weigh all that cost up front. Bespoke integrations, also to call out, that can become complex, especially when you are moving outside the Microsoft ecosystem. That's the second thing to flag. Third thing to flag, license costs need to be very carefully managed, and this can get out of control if not carefully managed and controlled. So we'll talk a bit more about this later on. And finally, just to highlight, shadow IT can emerge if governance guardrails aren't put in place. And when we say shadow IT, we mean staff members building their own applications without central oversight. So what this can result in is applications are being built without the normal security standards or perhaps duplication of effort going on across divisions because HR doesn't know that finance is actually building the exact same thing. Chris, would you add anything to that list?
I think you've covered it really well there. I think there's optimal use cases, and you've got most of it covered. I'm going to touch more on citizen developer as we go through. So I think that's
Okay.
one of the key things here, that low code platform.
Okay. So just following on from this, if you're looking to build your own internal business case, I suppose you'll want to know what good looks like. And we have some benchmark metrics here to give you something to compare against. And the source of the data here, it isn't impute data. It's a Forrester report. It's available online. The source is at the bottom of the slide there. And in terms of methodology, Forrester surveyed a number of organizations that have deployed the Power Platform on a large scale basis. They then used these insights to build a picture of a kind of composite or representative organization. The one caveat that I would give here is that these are large organizations that Forrester sampled, so they'll typically have more low-hanging fruit compared to small organizations. But it's a useful reference point to use when you're building your own internal business case. And I suppose the thing to flag, if you're achieving the levels that we've set out here, that's really good. So firstly, just in terms of quantified benefits, where Forrester were able to pull out hard data and get meaningful numbers, a 25% time saving is possible for impacted employees through process improvement. And that, from our perspective, we actually had a recent use case where a senior resource in a customer saw a 50% saving in his own time per week by automating a very labor intensive process. So, that number is very real. Second thing that Forrester found is that there's a big saving in development time as it's a low code platform. Power allows you to retire legacy applications that are code intensive. So if you're relying on development resources, this can be a very material saving. Third major finding from that report, top line revenue growth, which is always a bit of a tricky one to validate versus costs, which are generally more quantifiable. But Forrester found that within the business unit that adopts Power, there can be up to 7% revenue benefit by year 3 in their study. So one example they gave was a manufacturing customer surveyed that was able to avoid churn by being really responsive and quicker than competitors. The payback period for Power investments was found to be less than 6 months, and this goes back to how quickly production-ready systems can be built and operational. And finally, Forrester calculated an overall ROI of 224%, which is just phenomenal. I think most organizations would be happy with half that return. So this ROI was a mix of the items above in terms of time savings, but also other areas like reduction in stock losses, a reduction in the need for external vendors. So really powerful, hard metrics that you can benchmark against when you're building your own internal business case. It's also just worth highlighting the unquantifiable benefits, and just because you can't put a number against them doesn't mean that they're not real and they shouldn't be looked at for your business case. And Forrester found evidence, and there's a list of them here, improved employee engagement, business users being more empowered, related to that point, a more innovative relationship between business and IT, where there can be friction sometimes, and an overall reduction in legacy technical debt as Power is used to replace legacy applications. And finally, what Forrester found was a reduction in shadow IT where appropriate governance was put in place. So really powerful findings in that report. It's worth a read if you have the time. It's available online, and it's referenced at the bottom of the slide. So that concludes section 1, and we have one question here, Chris, which I'm going to fire at you maybe. where would you start with Power if you were looking for an optimal use case?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's two others in the chat that have appeared while you were talking that last bit too, and I think one's a question, one's a comment, and they're both great. So we should cover those also. I like the one from Lisa in particular because my answer to this question is pretty much what she's saying there, and you start with a pain point. So if there's something that's a manual task, a repetitive task, something that just takes up so much time, but you think, well, we could automate that and save, that's a great starting point. But anything that slows down operations or anything that hinders kind of the regular rhythm of the business, as I would say, then that's a great place to start. Other places I've seen um, Excel spreadsheets that have grown beyond the requirement to be an Excel spreadsheet. That's a database in some instances where I've seen it. And then you've got something on your slide there that talks about legacy technical debt. Access, access is not cloud friendly. It's not cloud enabled in the way that Dataverse is and Power Apps. So you're starting with small proof of concepts on these things. Seeing the challenge and seeing the blocker, to the hindrance to productivity, or the barriers to things that are, you know, um, stopping an organization growing, where it's like, oh, this just takes up so much time. Take that, think about how could we do this better. You could probably automate or build around that in the Power Platform. Start with a proof of concept. Just make sure that everybody's included on the journey. You talked there about finance, don't know that HR are doing that. So, make sure that all the key stakeholders are involved. But that's a really good, it's a good question to start with there, I think.
Okay. Okay. Good. Well, let's keep going, Chris. Just I'm conscious of time. So in our next section, we want to highlight free features that are available for Microsoft users, and when you start to run out of road with the free versions. And in the interest of time, we've picked two areas to focus on: the Dataverse and Power Automate. And I think it's really important to flag up front at this stage that there's no all-you-can-eat Power Platform license, either for individual users or for an organization. And it doesn't matter if you have E3, E5, or F3. And I think that's an important point to make upfront, and maybe something that's not widely understood. So, Chris, I think most people here would think that they already have the Dataverse and they do the Dataverse as part of their licensing, but you might just clarify what's generally available for free and what is premium.
Free from Microsoft. That's a really good way of putting it. It's a good question as well because, as with everything Microsoft, the answer is yes and no. You do have access to Dataverse, and there's always this kind of caveat. You've got a very limited, stripped down version if you are not buying premium licenses. So let's talk about, and Microsoft again, whether it's intentional or not, they'll talk about Dataverse and Dataverse for Teams in the same breath. Now, the two things are fundamentally different. They are based on the same data platform. You've got the same kind of core capabilities, but they are fundamentally different. That's not to say that Dataverse for Teams isn't very useful. Lisa's popped a question in the chat. Can I use the Power Platform to automate internal communications, leadership comms, digital updates in my absence? She says she's a team of one, and if she's off, the communication still needs to go. Which Power App might I use to do this? The good news is that kind of automation can be done in Dataverse for Teams. It's unlikely that you're going to need kind of premium per user workflow capabilities, but it's Power Automate that can be used there to help with the automation of these types of tasks. And at the top there, it says support to build low code, no code apps, flows and agents in Teams. And this for me is really, really important because Microsoft talked about citizen developer when they launched Power Platform or launched the brand of Power Platform and pulled it all together. And that says that within what they call modern workplace, so Microsoft 365 and Office 365 and Teams, anybody should be able to go in and start using these capabilities. So they've made it available very broadly across all of Microsoft 365, Office 365, and Teams, and said, there you go, go and kind of have a, do your worst or do your best, depending on where it is. So Dataverse for Teams, there's a visual editor in there. You can define and populate table data. It's included in most Teams licenses. The environments exist and can be created within Teams. So if IT have enabled it, end users can go and create an app, as it were, or workflow capabilities through Power Automate, and use that inside of kind of the tools that everybody uses day in, day out as part of their job, right? So we're talking Exchange, emails, and all of those things. Licensing for this, I see you've kind of moved on the slide there. The difference being is that if you want to start using fully fledged Dataverse, you need a Power Apps or a Dynamics 365 user subscription license. And you said something, Morgan, as you were going through there. There's this kind of, you start to build highly complex versus simple, and there's always going to be this middle ground where you're going to outgrow Dataverse for Teams. So if you've got an Office 365 SKU, I think E1, E3, E5, or Microsoft similar, you've got Dataverse for Teams. And it's great up to a point, but it becomes limited further down the line. And that's why you need to think about moving to Power Apps, Power Automate, kind of per user licenses or premium licenses, as they're now called, or also move away from what is just Teams. So if you look at some of the barriers that you've got, and if you think about business applications, and I'm gonna say it again, I'm gonna say the word access, Microsoft Access. Think about a structured database in those terms. You often, as you move into business applications, rather than just kind of glorified SharePoint lists, which is what Dataverse for Teams enables you to create workflow and content around, you start lacking field level security and auditing and record sharing and all of those things that you would expect from a fully fledged database or Dataverse application. If you go beyond 1 million rows, there's kind of a SharePoint list limitation there as well, I think, or you go beyond 2 gig of database size in Dataverse for Teams, then you've gone beyond the scope of what's available. So when you say it starts to run out of road, as you start to get larger, more data, that's all in there. Something that's really key there, you can only create canvas apps in Dataverse for Teams. So there are no model-driven apps capabilities. So when I talked about Dynamics 365 sales, customer service, field service, marketing, it's now customer insights, journeys, and all of those apps that Microsoft write, they are model-driven apps. So that doesn't exist in Dataverse for Teams. And also what is missing out of there are all of the core tables in the common data service or the common data model that we talked about. So accounts, contacts, leads, opportunities, cases, all of those things, they don't exist in Dataverse for Teams. So you can end up recreating the wheel, unfortunately, and you can end up recreating the wheel many times over in many different teams, because also you can't share these apps outside of the team that they are created in. So these, there's an app for everything nowadays. There's a Power App for everything, or there could be. You're restricted to the confines of the team that it's in. You're restricted by database size. You're restricted by a whole host of these things. But for what's included in Microsoft 365 and Office 365, sometimes for certain scenarios, that is good enough.
Okay, great. And will we quickly touch on Power Automate?
Yeah, we can, because again, I know this is your specialty, but the Power Automate SKUs and the Power Automate for Microsoft 365, if you just click on one more, I think it's just easier if we highlight the limitations. Power Automate for Microsoft 365 is great, again, if you want to customize and extend within Microsoft Teams. So Microsoft have this guidance in their licensing guides and terms. They talk about within the context of. And by in the context of, in order for it to be, accurately licensed, it has to be within the context of the embedding Microsoft 365 application. So once it goes outside of that, or once your flow needs to interact with something else or go anywhere near a premium connector, You say that only cloud data sources are allowed, no on-premises. So if you want to connect to a SQL database that is on-premises, then absolutely you're not going to be able to do that in Power Automate for Microsoft 365. And once you get into, you need a custom connector for a custom data source, or you need a premium connector, of which when Microsoft launched, there was 500 connectors. There are now thousands. I had a quick look this morning to just see where I was at. But premium connectors are pretty much everything around Azure SQL, Salesforce, any application that people provide, it's often labeled as a premium connector. So again, the Power Automate for Microsoft 365 is often really restricted inside of the teams. Just before we skip on one, there was a comment from Dan in the questions that I thought was really good. And in there he said, shadow IT or automation ambassadors. It was a really good comment. And what Dan's saying is he's built valuable apps and flows without fighting IT too much. And that's great because you can do that in Power Automate for Microsoft 365. He loves the Power AI literacy for all, loves the Power Platform, but he said he hears your point. Without some IT governance, you need to monitor license costs. What Microsoft have seen and what we've seen, the larger the organization, the more these automation ambassadors, good word there, Dan, actually, can get out of hand without any kind of control. And all of a sudden, there's a whole load of rogue apps out there that IT have no control of. It's not centralized. They don't know. And that's fine when it's in Excel because it's in a spreadsheet. But when it comes to automation, there can be things that can be changed behind the scenes. So you do have to be careful. So that was it for me for Power Automate for Microsoft 365.
Okay, great. Well, come to our third section now around cost management. And sorry, there was one other question which I'm conscious of time, Chris. So maybe very briefly we'll take it. How well does Power Platform integrate with other systems, e.g., SAP and SharePoint?
Yeah, absolutely. So it does, and it does it really well. And it's all done through those connectors that I mentioned before. So with all of the main platforms in the Microsoft ecosystem, it integrates seamlessly. There's absolutely no doubt about it. For everything outside, so for Dynamics, for SharePoint, great, all works really well. When you go outside of those sort of native integrations, then you've got connectors. So if you need to connect to SAP, or you need to connect to Oracle, or you need to connect to Salesforce, or any of those things, or on-premises systems, any of your niche enterprise applications that you might have written that are bespoke, that's where you need custom connectors, premium connectors.
Okay. All right, great. So for the final section before the demos, we're going to talk a bit about cost management strategies. And we've highlighted 5 areas here. And just to call out number 1, we would often say restrict self-service access to licensing within your organization. And the reason we would say that is it's very easy for users to sign for a free trial for 60 days. And before you know it, you're paying for extra licenses that maybe weren't budgeted for. So number 1, that's something to think about. Number 2, is a separate but related point, is to track your licensing month on month, both in terms of cost and usage. And you can regularly audit your assigned licenses so that you ensure you're not paying for extra licenses that you aren't aware of, but also you can look at underutilized licenses and do you really need that? Third thing to consider, Azure Blob Storage can provide equivalent functionality at a lower cost than other forms of storage. In particular, if you're dealing with archive data, that will still be accessible without disrupting workflows within the Power Platform. And if you're dealing with large format files, this is definitely one to consider if you want to keep your storage costs down. Number 4 on this list, just in the design phase up front, evaluate the level of external connectivity you need. And we've spoken about it, and Chris just touched on it there. We would recommend, to the extent possible, that you're using standard connectors. And you need to remember that API requests, in particular outside Microsoft 365, will likely add costs. So when you're building it up front, bear that in mind. And number 5, consider pay-as-you-go, which was recently announced by Microsoft. And where that will work really well is if you have lumpy or infrequent uses. It can be a great option. And Chris, there's a slide here just maybe to quickly cover the new pay-as-you-go model, which
Yeah, we dropped this
Microsoft
in. I
only.
forgot we dropped this in.
Yeah.
If you've got a Power Apps license, you don't get billed in pay as you go. I will say this is one path to bill shock, so just be careful about how you use this. It's not elastic capacity, so it's not kind of in my Dataverse environment. Let's say you've got 10 gig and then you need another 11th, you need another 1 gig to go to 11 gig. The environment is either completely in or completely out. So widespread infrequent usage, absolutely. I think $10 per user per month per kind of login, as it were, versus a $20 license. So it's half the cost. But if they use 3 apps a month, all of a sudden it's $30 instead of $20 because it's licensed per app. And the entire environment has to be in pay as you go. You can't just say, oh, we'll just use it for failover in ways in which you can use Azure. So definitely pros and cons for pay as you go environments. But it's a topic for another session, or I think another day probably.
Okay. Okay, thanks, Chris. So we've 2 demos. We're on to the final piece, the home stretch. In the interest of time, for the first demo, we have shortened the sequences in it so we can show you as much as possible, and it would just take far too long to run it live. So hopefully the technology works for me here. Get this powered up. Okay. So just to set the scene on this particular video, this is based on a system we built for an existing customer. It's an auto insurance brokerage, but the applications are much broader than that. And the customer in this case, Sarah, has received a link. She wants to get quotes for a new her car insurance renewal. So you can see here she's entering in her registration details. That can link to a government database to pull up the car. She enters in all her license details. She can upload her actual physical picture of her license and her no claims bonus, which will then be submitted to our auto insurance brokerage for processing. So application submitted. Obviously, it's been sped up here, so might be a bit longer than that, but really slick interface. We then cut to what's seen on the sales side. So what you have here is Sarah Morgan's application has been received by the sales team. We have all our details automatically input into our format. We can edit the data. We can input comments if we want, and a manual review has been flagged for this particular application. So for the driver license app validation, we have built a third-party integration into Abby Vantage, and you can see how well integrated it is. And Abby has extracted the key information from the driving license and identified that there's a mismatch between what was found on the license and it's just a naming. Sarah's included her middle name, so we can actually accept that. It's fine. This mismatch is okay. So after we've accepted the license, you can see that the form updates automatically. It's now all green tick marks. The no claims discount is shown here. It has the capability, it has AI included, so we can summarize the document for you. Quite a simple plugin that we built at the moment, but you can do further AI plugins if you want, and you can also email the customer directly in the portal if you want. We're happy enough with this one. We're going to submit the application received from Sarah, and that will go to our insurance companies on the other side who are going to quote for this piece of business. So we've now moved ahead to the quotes section of the application, and we can see here David Beckham. He has received two car insurance quotes. We can click into each of the quotes to see what pricing has been received in terms of premium, how that compares to an average. We can also put in other metrics here around insurer risk assessment, and we can put in various elements like commission, all fully customizable. If we're happy with that, we can send that to the customer. And what we're seeing here is the email being received on the customer end. So, Mr. Customer, David Beckham, you have received a quote from the driver from our auto insurer company. If you're happy with this quote, all you have to do is click on the link in this email. So really slick and integrated function. And finally, just very quickly to show you the Power BI dashboard, which links into this as well. It's all interactive. By clicking on a pie segment, you can see that you're pulling up the various applications, and the you also have commission targets versus your budget. So that's it for this demonstration. It is, as I said, a auto insurance brokerage demonstration, but it has much wider applications than that. If you're dealing with a customer or a supplier that needs to be onboarded and processed, then this is a good framework and maybe shows you the art of the possible. So, Chris, you're going to take the next one. Do you want to run it yourself, or will I?
Yeah, let's go live demo.
Okay.
We created the video just in case. Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, we can.
Great stuff. Conscious we're a little bit over time, so I'll rattle through it. One of the things that I wanted to just show today was around AI and the idea of this HR benefits assistant. So I went into Copilot Studio and I thought I'll keep it really simple. I thought, what do you need to create one of these agents that Microsoft are now releasing? And it's actually quite simple. You need knowledge, you need topics, and you need actions. You don't actually need all three, but you absolutely need knowledge to start with. So I pointed this to a HR policy samples document library. I went onto the web, I downloaded a load of these from just a sample provider. So in there, we've got kind of bring your own device policy, code of ethics policy. These were just template policies that I downloaded off the internet from nowhere in particular. If I drop into this BYOD policy, just so you can see the document in there, there's a lot of text in there, there's a lot of content in there, and to kind of summarize this stuff often isn't easy. So we've got this knowledge, we can create topics, we can create actions. So in the topics here, there's a greeting topic. So to create an agent, if somebody types in good afternoon, good morning, say, hello, how can I help you today? So if I go into testing this agent, for example, let's just drop back here and bring up the test so you can see some of the stats with it, and I'll say hi in there. This will respond. I'm just going to copy some stuff to my clipboard so I can pop it in. There's the response. Hello, how can I help you today? And let's ask this, can I bring my own device to work for IT purposes? And you think about your HR professional and you've got all these policies, and you get bombarded with questions, often come in via email, drain on your time, all that sort of stuff. What the agent will do is it will, it's taken its time this morning, shouldn't be doing this. What the agent will do is it will go in and it will index all of those documents. So it doesn't do it on the fly, it's done it in the past. This is where we put there you go. Yes, you can bring your own. And it also puts the references in there as well. Now, I could go in and I could kind of check. I could also ask it, what are the key points that I need to know about in this policy? Again, it would go off and it would think, right, as an agent now, I've indexed all these documents, I know the content, and it's just pure generative AI. I created this within kind of 20 minutes, 25 minutes, I would say, in Copilot Studio, so that if you think about, you could then push this out and publish it to a channel, and I'll come on to that in a minute. That's what's allowed, that's what's not. And again, if I want to take some annual leave, I want to take some annual leave. What's the policy around this? And that will go off, and that will look into the kind of the policy that's in there, and it will provide a response. If you go into, I'll wait for that to come back. When you've got your topics and your actions, you can publish this to channels, and there's a lot of channels you can publish these agents to now. So whether that's a Teams inside a Microsoft 365 environment, whether this is so for internal use, you could publish that to the HR team and everybody could ask questions in there via the agent. And that's kind of included in the licenses as of April the 1st, from what I can tell from Microsoft. You could publish it out to any other channel that you wanted, custom websites and the like. And it is that simple. You probably want to do some more design around it if you're going to publish this out to the public or to something else, but it is that simple to create, you're in 21 consecutive days, 15 working days. You can even get it to respond on text in that kind of way. So just a quick whistle stop there. And I guess the one thing, if the eagle-eyed would have noticed, it was web.powerva.microsoft.com, Power Virtual Agents, even though it's Copilot Studio. So that's kind of as you get to that content.
Right. And, Chris, this is obviously relatively new for Microsoft, the past 12, 18 months. So you can imagine in the next 12 months how far this is going to go. So it has great potential use cases. So look, that's it from us really. Please get in touch if you'd like to discuss any of the above or anything that you've seen in more detail. Our website is www.impute.com if you want to book a meeting. Thank you, Chris, for the time and for the insights. It's really valuable. And thank you everyone for joining, and have a good weekend.